Leanne from Compassionate Atlanta, and you might be able to see Gonna Work there from Compassionate Atlanta. And we just decided while we're going virtual, why not support our partners? We at Compassionate Atlanta, we're a global network. We're the grass arm of a global network based on the Charter for Compassion, and we're all about raising the good. So how can we uplift the good? You know, it's surprising that in these days of really such anxiety that are going on out there, the news is really trying to put out there what's good. And unfortunately, it's like the last 5 minutes of like, here's the good. So we're trying to flip that and really make good the central point of the way we live our lives. And one of the ways we do that is through partnering with other organizations. We part with nonprofits, with cities, with independent contractors, with small businesses. And so Shannon are great partners. And we thank her for bringing us a little bit of lightness in this time. And when has it been ever more important to be? This is kind of our mode right now, right? And so it's coming at a good time. So Shannon, thank you so much for doing this for us. And I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I think the world of you guys at Compassionate Atlanta. I worked for an arts and social justice network organization called Alternate Roots for about 6 years. And I think organizations bring other people together don't get enough acclaim for the work that they do because sometimes it feels invisible. And I really give you a shout out for your work and being a convener, because I see you. Even if I said we're going to try to do what we can to hold up the mic for that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you're right. Storytelling is so important right now. We're in a time where we're living and we will be telling each other later, right? And also we're stuck with people that we need to be able to tell a good story to. I personally am not stuck with anybody. I'm alone a lot, so I'm ruminating on stories, but I'm connecting with people online and on the phone a lot. So storytelling is it's the fabric of our lives. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to tell a good story and the power of our story. They come from our values, how they reflect who we are, and then how we can use our stories into the future, manifest the future that we want. So I am a professional storyteller and story coach. I've been out on my own doing this for almost 3.5 years now. So let's think back. What happened 3.5 years ago that might have been a part of that? So it was late 2016, and I had parts of my life that had inspired me to want to be a storyteller for a long time. I just kept ignoring my calling. Because I'd gotten all of those messages that you couldn't make a living doing this, that it was really not a viable way to live. And then the election happened. They kept saying that the reason why the election was so surprising was because we operate in these bubbles, in these silos of sameness. And I thought, well, gosh, if there's ever a time where I could be of service, now is it, because storytelling has this incredible capacity to help us hear each other across lines of difference. So I left my job, week's notice, and about $4,000 in the bank, and I've never looked back. So here I am today. So I'm going to start us off by telling a story, and then we're going to use that story to break it down into its parts and go from there. It was the winter of my discontent. The first of many, as it turns out, because I did not yet know that I am a sufferer of seasonal affective disorder. It was right before my junior year of college, and I was wandering. I was literally wandering from dorm room to dorm room as I was bothering the crap out of everybody, trying to have the same conversation. Should I drop out of school shut off, or should I just keep barreling through? You see, my uncle had died of AIDS here in Atlanta a few semesters before that, which launched me into some deep, dark existential depression because I couldn't decide how he would be feeling like he needed to hide from us as he had done, and how we would be the people that he would feel like he needed to hide from. But let's face it, also, I was a college student, so existential angst was just a part of the agenda. So as I was having about the 5th or 6th version of this conversation with my friends, they finally said, enough. We've had it with you and your angsty business. We nominate you to go down to midnight brunch on our behalf. You see, at the sweet little liberal arts college in Southwest Virginia, on the night before exams, they served us midnight brunch. All of the faculty and administration would show up in the cafeteria, and they would serve us pizza and eggs and waffles and syrup on a styrofoam plate. And we would show up in our pajamas, you know, with our Norton anthologies tucked under our arms, and we would take all the food back to our dorms, and, you know, we would do the thing that you're supposed to do the night before exams, which is to study heavily or drink heavily and play Skip-Bo and watch Days of Our Lives on the VCR because it was the 90s. So I thought my friend's idea was a great idea. Get out of their hair, get out of my head, do something useful for a minute. I was wandering back through my dorm yard. Those moments, they happen to me frequently. Perhaps they happen to you as well, where I'm in one place and then I'm in another ground. Frequently there's a lot of pain involved. This time was sponsored by the fact that someone had left a cap half off the pipe in the yard. And so if I thought that I was existentially stuck before, now here I was quite literally stuck because I could not pull my foot out of it. Now I can't see a lot of you because you've hidden your cameras, but I'm going to just take a leap and say that most of us are a certain age. And so I don't need to take too long into a history lesson to explain that a few years before this, baby Jessica had fallen down a well. Yes, baby Jessica was an 18-month-old infant who wandered out of her home in Texas and fell straight down into the earth. I remember this distinctly because they preempted every single channel, because back in the day, there was not 24-hour CNN news coverage. When something major happened, they just stopped the TV. And for me, they stopped playing Beauty and the Beast with Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton before she got guns for Terminator 2. So I was incensed with baby Jessica. Went on for days, felt like. So as I lay there, all I could think about were the helicopters down in my face. Hour 18. College student Shannon Turner has been stuck in this pipe for 18 hours as rescuers have struggled valiantly to free her. Until finally, one of my friends looking for her pizza and eggs and waffles and syrup on a styrofoam plate came out into the yard, and she said, "What's the matter for you?" And I said, "Well, just stand up." I mean, right. You see, laying down as I was causing my foot to point out like this, but as soon as I stood up, it caused my foot to point down like this. And so I was easily able to pull it out of the pipe. So these days, sometimes when I feel like life has just knocked me down, sometimes I can remember all I have to do is just stand up. So we're going to use this story as an opportunity to go through and look at how you tell a story. We don't even have to say this is a good story. It's just a jumping off place. I'm going to share my screen. Look, there's a Basquiat painting. And the first thing I want to note is how important it is to really be aware when you take off to tell a personal story, to know your first and your last line. I think of them as like the sandwich bread, you know, what holds it all together. So the first line is like, it's like stepping across that liminal space between everyday conversation and I'm talking for a little bit, now you're going to talk a little bit, like a tennis match, back and forth, back and forth. But with storytelling, with the first line, you're like all of the attention and saying, all right, here we go. So it's helpful to have a first line that's really clear, something that will, it doesn't have to be high energy, but it just makes people understand this is story mode now. So do you remember what the first line of my story was? If you do, type it into the chat. See if I can see the chat from here. I don't know if I can while I'm doing yeah, it was the winter of my discontent. So it was something, you know, a little bit literary, you know, it was like a play on words in that way. So I find that opening lines that are like that help in that stepping across the liminal space. Same thing with the last line. It needs to sort of help people understand, and now we're done. And in that case, it is like the other piece of the bread. It holds it all together, but it also needs to feel a little bit like the gymnast when she tumbles across the floor. Yes, yes, exactly. So the end of your story needs to have that feeling of the dismount. It needs to be really clear and not wobble, because that's what the gymnast gets points taken off for, right? So what would it be the storytelling equivalent of a wobble? Type that into the chat as well. Yes, like Forrest Gump. That's all I got to say about that. Any other thoughts? You don't have, if you want to actually come off of mute and say something, that's fine too. Yeah, I think the point is a lot of times people start telling a story and they don't know where they're going. And the last line of the story is kind of like, you can get in the car and not know where you're headed, but the last line is like your destination. So it's really helpful to know what that is. Everything else is sort of negotiable. I feel like you should know the shape of your, have an outline, but don't write it outward, because what that does is it locks it into the other side of your brain. So there's two sides of your brain. I mean, a lot of people have heard of this, you know, left brain, right brain. And one side is where the written language lives. The other side is where the oral language lives, experienced things. When you write something out, it becomes a script that you then feel like you can get right or wrong. But this is your lived experience, so you can't get it wrong. So why are you powered in that way? So let me go back to my screen share here. I'm probably getting really ahead of myself. Let me make sure. Yeah, so there's our gymnast sticking her landing. Ah, details. Details, if we're continuing with our sandwich metaphor, they're like the lettuce of your sandwich. So how many of you have ever gotten a sandwich and there's like so much lettuce that it's just piled high and you have to like take off the bread, scoop off some of the lettuce, put it back together, and then it'll fit in your mouth? Yeah, you know that what that feels like? That's too much detail in your story. How many of you have gotten a sandwich that you're like, what this sandwich needed was some really good crisp lettuce. Yeah, so that's not enough detail. So details really serve and drive a story forward. So let's hear from you, either through chat or through your phone. You can talk back if you're ready. What were some details in my story?
How your foot was in the hole.
Yeah, that was a specific detail. The food at the brunch, yes.
Mhm.
Wearing your pajamas to brunch, yeah. Priscilla is interesting. It says she says she always puts too much lettuce in her story sandwiches. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Priscilla?
Oh yeah.
You don't want to be on audio? No, you're still muted. Oh, it's I think it's on the bottom left of your screen. There you are.
Right now.
Yeah.
It's in the top right. I kept pushing the unmute thing and it was yeah, it's just a habit. It's a problem. I put too much detail. I get so bogged down in making sure that I've completely contextualized every detail of what happened before and all the things that are going on at the time, and the story is like 60 minutes long, and I lose my audience.
So I feel like this is where an outline can really serve you, especially if it's a story that you want to use for a public presentation. So just so we can introduce you, Priscilla is actually running for local office. You'll be seeing her a lot more per year. And I think that storytelling is obviously going to really serve the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it'll be really great for stories in your back pocket that you can pull out in different contexts and to be able to massage those so that you can see on my slide here that you can tell the same story and have it last 6 minutes, 60 seconds. You know, it really just depends on how much detail. And what's the point of the story? So I feel like making an outline, and especially where you can drop in or drop out parts of the story, depending on what your need is, would be really helpful. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, because there was part of this story that I left out for brevity today. And I mean, I was going really fast. I could feel myself flying. And it's nice to be able to slow that story down and give it the breath that, you know, where people are laughing back and all of that. But sometimes you just got to get through it. So are we still on screen share? Yeah, okay. So now I want to talk about the importance of vulnerability in our storytelling. Vulnerability is really tough for a lot of people. I do these workshops in the context of working with real estate agents, you know, business people in their suits. I've worked with girls who've been sex trafficked, lots and lots of different contexts. And at the end of the day, people really struggle with how vulnerable in one way or the other to be in their storytelling. And I know that we've all seen it in both directions, right? So let's unpack that a little bit. What would it look like to have a story that's no vulnerability at all? Fake, bragging. Guarded. That's a great word. To my thinking, it would be a story that would be almost like a report, as if you weren't there, and where there's no talk about context, Priscilla. I feel like context sometimes you really do need to give the internal experience of a story. Otherwise, why are you telling a personal story? If it's just about this happened and then this happened and then this happened, and there's no so what for ourselves, then that feels like a really boring story to me. So a lot of the context for me is the vulnerability. But then what does too much vulnerability look like in a story? Let's hear from you all. And I'm sure you've seen that not just in storytelling and poetry readings and all kinds of different contexts. What does it feel like to watch somebody be too vulnerable? TMI. Oh, but if I do that, I can't see their chats. I have to agree to disagree with you on that. So I was getting some instruction to go full screen, but I think I'm going to have to go back out of that if I can. Ah! Sorry. Yeah, something that makes you cringe. So in the interest of having us get to other parts of this, usually I play this clip of Brene Brown doing her TED Talk about vulnerability. Are you all familiar with Brene Brown? Yeah, she's pretty amazing. She's our country's expert on vulnerability, and she's come up with this amazing title for herself. She called herself storyteller researcher. And if you're going to make up a title for yourself, that's a pretty great one. So Brene's life was blown up by the fact that she originally did this talk about vulnerability, and it got a lot of people thinking, and she didn't think that it was going to be that big a deal. She thought the 500 people in the room might watch it, and then, you know, maybe 5 or 10 after that online. And it went so viral that millions and millions of people watched it. And during that time, her research was already starting to morph to being more about shame as the underlying reason why we have such trouble with vulnerability. And so they invited her back to do another TED Talk about shame. And so she started that talk off by talking about what had happened in her own life as it had become completely exposed through the TED Talk. And she's coined this phrase called a vulnerability hangover, which is after you've overshared, then you end up having this sense of a vulnerability hangover. I highly recommend both of her talks. And at the end of this, I want to talk about how we can connect outside of this, so I can send you all some resources, because I've developed a pretty exhaustive list of podcasts you can listen to, articles you can read, books you can read, all about storytelling and things related to it. Anyway, I like to think about the balance that we can strike in our storytelling is about appropriate vulnerability. And I liken it to being like exfoliation. So raise the hands, type into the chat, how many people here exfoliate? Do you buff your skin? Once in a while, love it. Feel like a baby after you're done? Do you miss going to Jeju right now? Do you wish you could go get the scrub down? Never done that. I think I'm going to put that on the list of things that I'm going to do one day when I can. So when you never exfoliate, your skin is, you know, it's dry, it's lifeless, it's like not attractive, right? When you over exfoliate, your skin becomes raw. It's open to infection. That's too much vulnerability. So you have to have a little bit of skin in the game to tell a good story, but not over exfoliate. and we all, like I said, we've seen it, we've experienced it, maybe we've even done it ourselves. It's that feeling of like, oh, I'm going to throw up. And not just because I just performed or told a story, but more, you know, I feel like somebody here should be paying for therapy, you know, on one side or the other. So just keep that in mind when you think about which details you're going to tell in your story. So I mentioned that storytelling has this real, like, embedded in the process is this power to transmit our values. So I want us to transition from process of storytelling to why we need to be telling our stories. How many people here feel like some of the problems that we're working on, and we'll just set COVID aside because this is a workshop that I've been doing for a long time, just other things in the world, how many of you feel like the things that you're working on are intractable? We're just never going to solve them. It's not that they don't deserve our work. We're going to keep doing the work, but that the work is itself, ultimately, we're not really going to move the needle on it. It would be exhausting, right?
Can you please ask the question again?
So how many out here feel like the work that you're working on or just social problems in the world are completely intractable? Like you might still work on it, but you feel like ultimately it's never going to be solved. One person at a time. Yep. There's a difference in solving the problem and moving the needle. Interesting. Yes. Yes, that's a good point. Yabo says, I feel that way. I feel like I'm doing the work, but maybe it's not going to be solved. Bringing in Dr. King. The arc of justice is long. Taking a step. Yeah. So I put this out here because I feel like one of the abilities in our storytelling is to start understanding that there's power in our words. And when we say things like, yeah, I'm working on poverty, but it's really never going to go away. Or, climate change is just here to stay and we can't really fix it. There's power behind that. And I'm not saying that I'm totally naive about these things, but I just want us to be careful about our words and how we frame things. So one way to look at that is in the literal framing of our stories. Do you remember this old diagram of how a story is shaped from English class back in the day? Mm-hmm. So, they used to say a story starts with an exposition and goes to climax and then falling action and then denouement, that French word, the resolution. So I like to say, let's take it to chemistry class. Who remembers this symbol from chemistry? What did that mean? It was the delta symbol from the Greek, which meant change. So there's a chemical property that something had changed in the experiment. Like two chemicals came together and all of a sudden there was something new. So when we think about formulating a story, I want you to think about, I haven't come to the end of my story until I figured out what has changed. What's changed in me, the circumstances, the environment. That is how you really put the bow on your story. Because otherwise, it wasn't a story, it was an anecdote, right? So I could have said, this one time in college, I put my foot down a hole. Mm-hmm. I mean, what I could say that, but what does it really do for the world, right? So the point is, it took me 6 minutes to get to the place of understanding what the point of that story was. So if we're finding the change in our stories, then we're in an everyday, very possible way, mapping out the possible into the impossible every single day. You know, what if this is possible? So it starts to come from our choices. And there are two kinds of people in this world. This is from a literal TED. You know, TED doesn't just put out talks. They actually send out articles and stuff you can read as well. And so they say there's two kinds of people in this world, which I think is hilarious. I think there's two kinds of people in this world. People who think there's two kinds of people in this world, and then everybody else. Right? But in this article, they proffer that we tell ourselves two different kinds of stories. My life is going from good to bad, or my life is going from bad to good. And the thing that's really interesting about that as a frame is that when you notice that about yourself and other people, you start to see that they are making choices around that narrative. People as individuals live their lives that way. Organizations tend to shape themselves and their choices that way. Communities, all the way. I mean, like, it's powerful stuff when you start to realize that our value and the way that we see the trajectory of our lives or our, you know, organizational systems really has this, talk about the arc of history. You know, if you see things as ultimately getting better, then you're going to participate in that. If you feel, then you might just take a back seat or just say, I'm going to get mine while I can. Now, how we help other people in that is really interesting. Thank you. So I just want to note that this, if we're looking at our lives in terms of how our values traject into the future, then that means that we start making the choices moving forward, and we have the ability to project into that future, and that sets the course, right? So that comes from everything from like, oh gee, I feel like there's a strong possibility I'm going to run into that X at that concert because it just feels like that's a place we're going to run into each other, and that could be based on a hunch or intuition, all the way to like, I just want to tell you quickly, so my parents got divorced just a few years ago, and my mom, last year, she had been planning for about a year. She's finally going to go out on her first big vacation on her own with her girlfriends. She was so excited. She put the money down on it the year before. She was, you know, talking about it all the time. Every time she talked about her trip, she would also say, gee, I don't know. I feel like your grandmother's going to get sick on that trip. I feel like they're just like, I'm pretty sure. I think your grandmother's going to get sick. My mom's going to get sick, and I'm not going to be able to take that trip. I think that I shouldn't have put the money down. Sure as the world, 3 days into her trip, my grandmother went into the hospital, and she had to come home from Canada. And take from that what you want. I just feel like saying it over and over again gave it a certain power. And I feel like when we manifest these things, when we talk about them over and over again, when we tell ourselves a certain story, we do that, you know, we give it power. And so I want to invite us all to think about what we've been meditating on in terms of our fears, our hopes, our belief in the future from here, because goodness knows we're caring a lot about what the future might mean right now. And like, I've been thinking of my regrets about, you know, things I haven't done, which is very easy to do, to like start telling myself the story. And I coulda, shoulda, woulda, you know, gone to this place and, you know, visited this friend and all of that stuff. Stops today. Now I'm reminding myself, this is what I go around talking to everybody about all the time. I'm going to start manifesting what the future is going to look like. When social distancing is over, these are the things that I will do. This is the story that I will create, beginning with my choices today. And so I want to invite you, I hope that you have a piece of paper nearby, or you can just open up another screen, to, using all the skills that we've just talked about, make yourself a little outline of a story that you're going to make true 6 months from now. We're just going to go ahead and say that it can happen 6 months from now. Maybe it's as simple as taking a walk with a dear friend that you miss seeing right now. Maybe it's as big as, for me, that trip to Ireland I still haven't taken. What is the beginning, the last line? What are the details of that story? I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to get started on that, and then we're going to come into group discussion. Who is your audience? That's probably going to be different for each of us. I feel like the first audience is ourselves. For you, this could be something that you could make into like a thing, you know, like something you're going to use for, you know, talking to the public. I could really see you, Priscilla, standing up and telling this story somewhere. Hey, Laura. Got a friend over here on IG Live, I think. Oh, Yabo, we're making a manifesting story, something for about, you know, we're going to say 6 months in the future, something that you're going to make become true. Something that could be really simple, something that you're yearning to do, or something a little bit, you know, bigger in scope, something that, you know, you really want to bring into fruition. How are folks doing? Do you need another couple of minutes? Okay, let's go ahead and come back together. And I'm going to stop the screen share, but don't remind me to, or don't let me forget to come back to that at the end. I'd love to hear from some folks about what your manifesting story is going to be. And let's go ahead and do this by talking if you feel comfortable.
Okay, I'll jump in.
Thanks, Leanne.
You know, I'm never shy. So I was first writing I didn't get the directions right. So I was writing like how I would just tell a story about what was happening right now. And then you said no in 6, and I just love my story.
Great.
Of my story
Mhm.
or what? Okay, so normally, as you know, anyway, we have a fundraiser in October, and it's a storytelling. It's a storytelling event, but it's a fundraiser for Compassionate Atlanta. And so I have been re-envisioning it so that it's a storytelling event, but instead of being a fundraiser throughout the year, with this being sort of like of that project, and we give out mini grants with some of the funds that we raise. So we do it we shift it, and we don't do it in the same, we never really spend a lot of money on the event, but we having nicer food, which people like. If we get the wine donated, great. If not, we don't have wine. But we really pare down the budget and we give out mini grants. And so what came to mind in my story is that our storytellers are actually the ones that are telling our mini grant recipients are the ones telling the story about the ripple effect of what their grants did. So I see Iabo dancing. She likes my story. But anyway, that would be such a beautiful manifestation of like, here's this little thought in my head, and like I can see it happening. So I'm really grateful for doing that exercise with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else ready to share? Look at me. How about you, Priscilla?
I'm a little confused as to how much you want of this.
I think we have time. I'm hearing that you also want to work on how much detail you put into your story. So I'm going to give you a window of 3 minutes.
Okay. So I was playing a band gig in Athens, Georgia in Halloween of 2016 in the middle of the presidential campaign. And my bandmates wanted to wear dresses. And I said, okay. And they're not doing drag, they're just wearing dresses. And so I put on a suit, and I just gotten this haircut, more or less. And by the end of the evening, everybody thought that I was Donald Trump, dressed up as Donald Trump for Halloween. And, I can't help it. I look like the guy. And as a performing artist, what am I going to do? Say no? So by and by, I did but I didn't want to be a man. I wanted to be me. I'm not me, but I wanted it. So I invented the character of Donna J. Trump, and being of a political mind and believing profoundly that dissent is patriotic and an expression of love, I've always been somewhat politically active, but I was in the streets a lot, and more and more and more and more and more. And Donna would go to protests and be all over Atlanta. And I went to an anti-Klan rally down in Union, and as a result of that, I went to a tiny town, Woodbury, Georgia, trying to get the mayor to have a recount because he was a bigot in a 60% African American community. And Donna is really beloved. She makes the resistance happy. So over the course of 2017, I did her a lot, and she was out and prominent and recognized, and I have a Facebook page and so forth and so on. So during Stacey Abrams' campaign, I was active as Priscilla, but also Donna was in the streets. And between election day and when they were finishing the count of provisional and how's my time? Provisional and I'm done. That was 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow. See?
Yeah, but you have to finish the story.
Okay. So we were reminding legislators who are there for special session that every vote counts. And we started chanting, and they arrested 15 people, including me. And I vowed that, well, they like having me at the Capitol so much, I'll just go every day during the legislative session. And I did in 2019. And I saw how things work in the Capitol. And then in the fall of 2019, I saw that there wasn't anybody opposing the sitting member of the House of Representatives in my district. And I asked an activist friend if I should run, and she said yes. And so I'm running, and I'm determined to win. And a lot of what I'm about is reinvigorating the people here with a sense of their belonging to democracy and having a voice, and helping them understand that at the state level, you can go to the Capitol and meet everybody. And so on November 3rd, I'm going to get elected.
Yes.
Woo! Great story.
Yeah. So,
But 3 minutes.
thank you, Priscilla. Awesome. Becca, would you be willing to share a story? No? Okay. I'm seeing a lot of screens of people who are there but not on camera. Anybody out there on audio, would you be willing to share a story? Hi.
Hey, sorry, I'm doing a lot of moving. My name is LaDonna, and what I wrote, I had this opportunity to work with a church to create programming for the students on the campus that they are. So in 6 months, I look forward to creating these classes and opportunities for students.
Thanks, LaDonna. Yabo? That's fine.
Personal.
I understand.
Yeah.
So I just want to take a moment of silence to honor all of your stories, the stories that have come from the past, and the real knowledge, the human knowledge stories that helps us to know that we've already lived through everything that we need in order to get through this moment. And I mean that, because I know this moment feels really hard, but everything that you've lived through, everything that your ancestors through is embedded in your DNA, and that's something that you can pull from for your resilience to get through to the next moment. And then I want to acknowledge that the world that you will create in the future will be beautiful. And I know that because I'm already seeing it. You know, a lot of people are trying to compare this to other things, other major things that have happened to us. You know, I've heard people compare it to September 11th or the Snowmageddon or what happened to us. And I definitely especially disagree with comparing it to 9/11 because it felt like it was about 60 seconds before everything turned to fear and suspicion of the other, and people started being for war. And in this moment, it feels like that's why I feel like partnering with Compassion Atlanta in this time is so powerful, because the generosity of the spirit, the outpouring, the refusal to let people be left alone in this time has been incredible. I think that what's important to remember that this is going to take a long time. As Priscilla reminded us, the arc of history is long. And in that first week, we were sort of trying to use up all of our resources and embedded knowledge in that first week. And resilience really does mean for the long haul, you know? So remind yourself that lots of rest, lots of water, lots of like, just ability means just admitting, like, I'm not okay today. I'll probably be okay tomorrow, but in this moment, not okay. You know? And then I want to acknowledge present moment, the future will come. So I'm just going to take a moment to breathe together with you. And I also do want to invite you to stay connected with me and with Compassion Atlanta. I imagine if you found your way into this call, then you're already, but as I mentioned, I have this really lengthy resource sheet that I would love to connect and send you. So if you want to send me an email, or, you know, find me on one of my social media platforms, I'd be happy to send that to you. And if you want to talk about individual coaching, we can do that as well. So thanks so much for the opportunity, Compassion Atlanta. I look forward to, as they say in Casablanca, Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you. Leanne,
Yes.
say something.
So Iago and I are co-directors. That's why we get to tell each other what to do. But anyway, I just want to thank you for showing up. And I really, truly believe that manifesting our own story is truly possible. So I loved how you walked us through that. I think Priscilla did a better job of telling her story than I really explained myself. So I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to practice with it, Iavo, and gonna work on manifesting that story. And it's really beautiful. And I think at this time, I wrote in the little chat box, it gives us control over something when we feel like we're not in control of things. So Priscilla, I look forward to the vote for Priscilla sign. I'll have to follow you. I definitely know you as Donna J. many a time. And so anyway, Shannon, thanks everybody for being here, and just take care of yourselves, okay?
Oh my gosh, y'all, Becca has chatted us a picture of Donna J. Trump, just so you know. So please don't, because it is fabulous, as Donna J. Trump is a fabulous, sometimes a little bit uncomfortable person to see. But she definitely will press your button.
Awesome.
Yes. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.